Good morning. My name is Faith Halliday and I am thrilled to be your MC for most of the Dialogue's very first ever Ignite GWS Summit. There you go. Woo. Oh, thank you so much, because crazy story. I was the understudy for today's MC. And I absolutely swear on our beloved Greater Western Sydney that I did not manifest him getting ill. In fact, I might have low-key been dreading it. But as the stars would align, your girl got caught up yesterday. So help me out a bit. We're going to have a good time. But I am putting it out there just to manage all expectations. For those of you who know the Dialogue's regular MC, the amazing Rowan Barker, I'm a much less polished, heaps more scrappy version of him. But do not stress. As you'll later hear, Florence Mary Taylor, who we've dedicated an award to, stay tuned for that later in the program, it's a really good bit. She was once described as a rat bag, so I reckon we got it good. But without further ado, let's get started with an acknowledgement of country video by the Catholic Education Diocese of Parramatta.
Bujari Malinwal,
Warami Wallabalami Garambarak, Diegiara Jamaica,
and Shneya, Inga Ingara Darugutiam. Nine Nurawa, Wangunura, Jinmagangu Mangnura.
Dargiora, Yenmala, Uburia, Udangara, Gunyulungulung.
Titirigora, Yanajanui, Bubulingami.
Hello everyone, it's good to see you wherever you have travelled from today. My name is Jamaica.
And my name is Shneya, and we're Darug, Dangari, and Gumbangi women.
This is our country, our mother's country, the country of our grandmothers, grandfathers, and ancestors.
Our people have walked on and cared for this country for more than 80,000 years. So thank you for walking with us today and strengthening our spirit.
And on behalf of our people, welcome to Darug country.
Yamagaranginda, Ngaygayer Manjabaraba. Hello, how are you? My name is Manjambaraba. My birth name is Akira Field. I come from the lands of the Gumori people of the Red Sands. I'd like to acknowledge the Wangal people of the Darug Nation, of the lands on which I stand upon. And on behalf of CEDP, I'd like to pay my respects to the Darug people and the Gundungurra people, as their country is where our schools and our offices reside. I'd like to pay my respects to the ancestors of the now, then, and the future. I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders who pass on the knowledge we need to care for country and continue our living culture. I'd also like to pay my respects to the trees that sway to the sound of the winds, to the waterways that nourish our roots, to the animals that walk beside us on the sands our feet leave footprints on, and to the stars in the skies that guide our ways and tell us the stories of our dreaming. As we take our next footsteps on the lands of country, may we walk together in unity and in the footprints of our ancestors. This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
So before we get into the content component of today, there are a few announcements. And again, I'll need to read them because I'm the understudy. But Ignite GWS 2022 is delivered in partnership with the New South Wales Government, Commonwealth Bank and NEC. We are grateful for the generous support of our host, the City of Parramatta, and our sponsors, Australian Motorsport Innovation Precinct, the City of Campbelltown, Hitachi, Kimberwali, SEC Newgate Australia, SMBC, South Western Sydney Local Health District, TAFE New South Wales and the University of Sydney. So we're doing something different today, and we encourage you all to participate as much as you can just to ensure you get the most out of the day. For something new, we're using Slido to collect your questions. You can now take out your phones, go to slido.com and type in the event code 4520576 or scan the QR code on the screen now. Spoiler alert, because I got you, your questions may be projected on these big mama screens, so like spell check hard. And some other housekeeping, please put your mobiles on silent, unless your ringtone is girls just want to have fun. We'll break for morning tea and lunch. Catering will be served just outside the doors where we entered and registered. If you have registered for a special dietary meal, please see the catering staff and they will hook you up. There's an event program on your tables with the day's agenda, and you can scan the QR code in there to read all about our amazing lineup of speakers. And please do your part from the planet by returning your name badges at the end of the conference. They're sustainable, recyclable, not edible, but there will be boxes at the doors on your way out, so just pop them in there. Okay, enough of that admin stuff. So I've hyped myself up and I feel like we got a good thing going on, but I'm about to disappoint you again because I think this is just a total stitch up. But unfortunately, like our MC, Councillor Donna Davis, Lord Mayor, City of Parramatta, is also unwell and she sends her apologies. But instead, and this is a really good bit, I'm going to throw straight to the Western Sydney Leadership Dialogue's Executive Director, the remarkable Adam Leto, for today's first session. It won't be as good as mine, but let's welcome Adam.
Thanks, Faith. You know, when I heard you say I got some disappointing news, I thought, what sort of an introduction was that? But you recovered, so thanks, mate. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adam Leto. I'm the Executive Director of the Western Sydney Leadership Dialogue. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands which we meet today, the Darug people, and pay my respects to Indigenous elders past, present and emerging. We saw that great clip earlier from the Catholic Education Diocese of Parramatta, and in response to that, and in keeping with today's themes around innovation, I want to acknowledge the Executive Director, Greg Whippy, who will be here today. I haven't seen him. He's pretty hard to miss, so I don't think he's here yet, but he will be here later. Greg's going to be retiring after 40 years in the profession, recently announced that, and he's been a great friend and supporter of the dialogue, but more importantly, one of the region's leading, most innovative forces driving change in the education space. So it's been a remarkable contribution and one certainly worth recognising. So thanks to Greg, and certainly wish him well with whatever comes next. In a little bit, I'm going to call to the stage two people who I think arguably some of the more significant voices we'll hear today. But before I do that, I want to quickly talk through the genesis of this event, which is the first time we've hosted it and why we think it's important. Like most things, it started with an idea that was born in the middle of 2020 with the world and Western Sydney in the full grip of COVID-19. Now coming up with the idea of staging an event with 300 odd people, including those in government, all in close proximity, didn't sound that hard at the time. Well, we didn't think so anyway. That was before the words social and distancing and even Omicron were even a thing. So anyway, we're nearly 1 year on from when this event was originally meant to take place, and although we're staging it a little later than what we'd hoped, we are certainly able to host it now in a far more friendly and safe setting, despite the recent flu storm that's hit Sydney. As much as things have changed over the past couple of years, the main driver for this event has very much stayed the same. For us, today is very much about how we grow the Western Sydney economy, creating the jobs of tomorrow, fueling the new industries, equipping our students with the skills and knowledge to succeed. These were some of the challenges we faced as a region prior to the pandemic, and they're even more of a factor now. When you look at interest rates, rising cost of living pressures, petrol, energy, childcare, just to name a few, there's no doubt that there's some economic uncertainty ahead, even more so in Western Sydney, which is so reliant on consumer spending. Today is not just about driving productivity though, it's more about the people who will ignite change. The goal of today, and one of the main reasons why we've established this summit, was not just shine the lights on the projects and the brains that sit behind them, but to use these examples as ways to underline the value that can be generated by doing things a little bit differently. Western Sydney, the nation, can't afford to sit back and let the opportunities that exist in places like the Aerotropolis, Westmead, our industrial and employment lands scattered all across the region. We can't let them go to waste. Importantly, we can't lose sight of the importance of listening and nurturing the next generation of talent that sits in our classrooms and universities. Which brings me to my guest that I'd like to bring to stage. In Rachel Powell, we've got the principal of James Ruse High, a place that's topped the state in HSC and NAPLAN results for the last 30 years, and whose famous alumni include the likes of Atlassian co-founder Scott Farquhar. If you've been to their website, there's a whole list of famous people that have been through there, so I'm not going to list them all, but Scott's probably one of the standouts to me. I'd also like to call up Dorothy Hoddinott, the former principal of Holroyd High School and someone who's led a different type of success. Despite being one of the more disadvantaged schools in the region, and a school comprising of a large percentage of newly arrived migrants and refugees, she was able to help a lot of these kids not only complete high school, but to go on to tertiary education in record numbers. Please welcome to the stage Rachel Powell and Dorothy Hoddinott. Guys, we don't have a lot of time this morning, but I thought it was important that as we start today's event, and given that we're going to be talking a lot today about the future of Greater Western Sydney, to actually hear from two people who have and are playing a role in helping shape the young people who will lead it. We're going to be hearing a lot over the next few hours, particularly from government. We're going to be hearing from industry, from stakeholders about what the future of our economy looks like and what we should be doing and what we're not doing. What I want to know is where our students fit into this picture. What are they saying about their futures and how are they being equipped with the knowledge and skills they need to succeed? Rachel, I'll start with you.
So all schools do a survey called Tell Them From Me, and I looked at our last year's survey the other day, and our students, which is the most traditional students you can get, very ATAR driven, they're asked a question about what skills will equip them for the future, and they get given a list of 12 different skills and subjects. So our students ranked communicating with others, thinking critically and problem solving as 1, 2, and 3, and English and maths, which is the bread and butter for James Ruse Agricultural High School students, as the last and least important for them in their future. So I know that's what business and industry is saying our young people need. And guess what? Our young people are saying that as well.
Stark. And speaking of contrast, I mean, Dorothy, your students, probably fair to say, a little bit different to the students that attend James Ruse High or former students. Talk us through the differences in the sort of demographic makeup of your kids and what were the things that interested them?
The sort of school that Holroyd is, and many schools in Western Sydney are, is a disadvantaged school. We had about 65% of our kids were in the bottom quartile of socioeconomic disadvantage. And yet by the time I left the school in 2018, we were averaging about 60% with first round university offers from our HSC class, which is well above the national average of just over 20% for young people in that area. I think that what they wanted were the opportunities. They wanted the opportunities to make choices in their future that would give them careers and vocational pathways, because not everybody needs to go to university. And they wanted the opportunity to live full lives and to be accepted into the general community in a way that some were not. So that was fairly important. To achieve what we achieved, we had to raise expectations, not only of the students themselves, but the teachers and their families. Because one of the issues for disadvantaged kids is the low expectations that they and society in general have for their progress through education. And then what we had to do, because you can't simply raise expectations, we actually had to provide the resources that were necessary for them to achieve that. And that meant we had to look hard at the curriculum and what we offered. Because another thing, and you may not be aware of this, another thing in schools like mine was that there's a limited curriculum. Schools can't afford to mount things like advanced maths classes or advanced English. You may only have a handful of young people who wish to do those courses. And because you can't mount those courses, chemistry, physics, and so on, you don't offer them. And so the lesser courses come in, and that then affects, in the end, that affects the ATAR and access to the ATAR, and that affects university choice, for example, for those who want to go on to tertiary education. And that then affects their futures. And so it's a whole rolling effect there that we need to be very mindful of when we're working with less advantaged communities.
On the issue of ATAR, is there too much emphasis on it in terms of next steps in that pathway into jobs and employment opportunities?
Pardon?
Do we place too much emphasis on ATAR and results?
Well, yes, I think so, because the reality is about a third of all students now go to university without the ATAR being taken into account. They either go in on things like access scholarships and access entry, or they have early acceptance of their entry into courses and so on. And then, of course, there are all the mature age students who come in on the basis of recognition of prior learning, perhaps, or experience in the workforce. And so about a third of students, in fact, don't have an ATAR when they enter university. And then it's up to them to prove what they can do. I think that's reasonable.
I'd like to carry on from what Dorothy was saying about raising expectations. I also think role models are really, really important, and that's where business and industry plays a key part. I think that you've got a perfect opportunity to come into schools like both of our schools, very, very different, but very like they represent the range of students that are in Western Sydney. And there's the old adage, you can't be it unless you see it. And I think the more business and industry representatives we have in school, particularly from minority areas, LGBTQ or ethnic minorities and women, that come into schools and tell students, you can follow this pathway, you can follow this career, then I think that's a really very, very important thing that you can do in this area where, you know, Western Sydney, the students in Western Sydney are going to be the future leaders of New South Wales and Australia. And I think it's really important that we take the opportunity to nurture them.
That's a great point. Despite the different demographic makeup of both of your schools, it's fair to say you've both had success in stepping out of your lane and challenging convention. Would you like to see more within the education system shaken up and more flexibility provided to our educators to really bring out the best in the kids? And what are some of the barriers to achieving that?
Well, I think a major barrier is resource. You probably are unaware that under the Gonski reforms, there was a proposal that schools would all schools, government and non-government, would have a minimum resource standard. That is, this is what is required for every child to reach the appropriate educational outcomes. By 2023, that's next year, all private and Catholic schools will have reached 100% of the resource standard. But the system was put together in such a way that just over 90% of the resource standard is allocated to public schools. And I think that a lot of our schools are in need of additional resource. It's not just the money, it's the way you can use that money, particularly to buy extra staff and teachers. That's one of the things I did. I didn't invest in electronic whiteboards or other technological junk, really, in the end. What I did was I bought teachers, and I bought teachers' aides for kids with disabilities. And so that additional teacher support and the additional administrative support lightens the load in schools and actually enables you to work on a more one-to-one basis with children who do need often additional support for one reason or another.
Rachel, how do we shake things up?
Look, I think it's about opportunities. Students will work hard and achieve great things. My school is an example of that. If they see an opportunity and they see a future in a career that they want. And, you know, the more that we can provide opportunities for the young people of Western Sydney, all young people of Western Sydney, then the better they're going to achieve.
Great. We've got a couple minutes left, and I'm going to end with one question. Mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of government representatives today. We've got the Treasurer has just arrived. Leaders in the industry, what's your message to this room about how they can either work to support or help, work with students to, achieve better success? What's the one message? What's your takeaway to these guys?
We had a very profitable relationship with the Australian Business Community Network, where both teachers were mentored or formed partnerships with people in industry, and students were mentored and took part in a variety of programs which exposed them to the business world in a very important way. One of the issues, again, for children from less advantaged backgrounds, particularly in Western Sydney, where they may feel that they're geographically isolated from the mainstream of life. They don't often get into the CBD in Sydney. They don't often get into the CBD in places like Parramatta. The opportunity to be mentored by someone in business was very powerful, because what that does is it opens up the possibility to young people that they can say, I could do this. And the point that a kid says, I could do this, is that changing moment in their lives, because the next thing is, what do I have to do to do this? And that's where the school can come in, and business can have a good partnership with schools to answer those questions and to provide the support that young people need to move their lives ahead. That's really very important. The OECD stresses the importance of social mobility for young people, and the importance of mentoring, and for poorer students, the importance of scholarships, so that they have the individual resources that they need. All of those things sort of knit together. I would say the ABCN was one of the important parts of our work. The other was partnering with the university outreach programs. And we belonged to as many of those as I could. And we also belonged to cultural and arts things, because a well-rounded person is also an important person. We shouldn't be concentrating just on a narrow view of the curriculum. We want people to have broader understandings, be able to think critically, be able to communicate. All of those things are terribly important.
Great point. Rachel?
Look, I think that government need to go out and speak to young people. I think I've got the best job in the world, because every day I get to speak to young people and they enlighten me, and they are passionate about social justice, climate change, inclusion, refugee rights. They are so passionate and so coherent in what they want to say, and I think that message needs to be conveyed to government. You need to go out, listen to these young people and consider what they've got to say, because they are very passionate, very clever and very well-spoken individuals. And when I say young people, I mean all young people of Western Sydney, not just the students of my school.
I think that's a great way to end. Guys, thank you both, not just for today, but for the work you've both done and are doing to help foster the next generation of talent. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Dorothy Hoddinott and Rachel Powell.